Alright guys, how's it going? So in the last video that we did, I talked a little bit when I announced that we were coming back to the content world. I briefly touched on the fact that we don't kayak fish anymore, and I wanted to touch on that and explain. So very quickly, the three things that at least led to me not wanting to kayak fish anymore were stability, storage, and return on investment. That one's going to be the hardest one to explain. I'll get there. But we'll start with storage first off. I'm aware there's a ton of great companies making awesome products for storage. Rod storage, tackle storage, you name it. They're great products. They just never fit right for me. I was just missing something. And it's a personal thing. It's nothing to do with those companies and the product they put out. When you grow up fishing on boats that have internal storage or room for a large tackle bag and everything else, you get accustomed to that and being able to access it without having to turn around, finagle with things, or have a backpack in front of you like I used to do that was stuffed to the gills with all of my tackle that if anything happened, off the boat it goes and there goes my gear. It never sat right with me. And like I said, personal thing, nothing against the kayak world at all. It was just something that I never really enjoyed. Stability. I did a podcast episode with Chuck Earls a few years ago to discuss ultimately what spearheaded this one. For those that don't know, I had a Jackson Big Tuna, which is still, in my opinion, the best kayak that has ever been produced. That boat was a tank. It fished everywhere. It did everything. I loved it, and I'm pretty sure I shed a tear when I watched it leave my driveway. But we were duck hunting one day, and Patton and I were in our kayaks, and I reached over the side of the boat to grab a mallard that we had down. Air temps that day were in the 20s. Yeah, like lower to mid 20s. Water temps, I would have said, were probably in the low 40s, maybe upper 30s. Not the coldest I've ever seen, but it was chilly. And as I reached for that duck, the kayak kicked out from underneath me in a way that it had never done in the 5 years that I had owned it. And I rolled it. We were probably about 150 yards offshore at that point. At least that's what Google Maps says when I draw it out. I managed to get the kayak back over, but I couldn't get back in. I was too full of water. I tried swimming. The cold cramped me. And ultimately I tried to pull the cord on my inflatable life vest, and it didn't inflate. So I pulled the cord 3 times, no dice. Patton got up to me. He asked me if I wanted a hand. He asked actually to put me in his kayak, and I said absolutely not. I'm not running the risk of rolling you too. I'll just hold on to mine and swim as far as I can. You go get this duck and come grab me when you're done. And he did, and I don't remember most of this portion of it, but there was a very good stretch that Patton had to paddle with me holding onto the back of his kayak and then holding onto the front of my kayak. And he paddled a long distance to pull me back to shore. I got to shore, stripped off as much clothing as I could, caught my breath, dried my phone out as best as I could, called the wife and let her know exactly what happened, and let her know that I was okay. But had I not been with Patton that day, I would not be sitting here making this video. If I was alone, I'd be dead. And that was enough for me to get off of that kayak. Sorry. Furnace. It's cold in Ohio. The next day I went out and bought a John boat, and I never looked back. I think I went out on the tuna 2 more times after that event, both in the summertime. I wasn't messing around with cold water in a kayak again. And then ultimately I decided it was time to sell it. So that's storage and stability. Return on investment. I want to be clear when I say this, that every boat is a money pit. I realize it doesn't matter if you buy a $500 kayak from Walmart or a $100,000 Icon or Skeeter or whatever boat you decide to buy. They're all going to be investments that you won't get money back on. I understand. For me, what it was, the investment was the cash, but the return was the fun that I had, the fish that I caught, the adventures that I was able to do. And once again, the Big Tuna was the best kayak for me. I love that boat. I will vouch for it until the day I die that it was the best kayak ever made. But it had its limitations. And the more I fell in love with fishing big lakes, even though it was one of the biggest kayaks at its time, I never felt comfortable being on those big lakes because of exactly what happened to me when I was duck hunting. I wasn't able to do all the things that I wanted to do in that kayak that I could with a boat. And the John boat was the first step in that direction, and then I believe it was 2 years ago now. Yeah, 25 will be 3 years ago. I bought my boat, and we'll do another video going over my boat and the different upgrades that I've done, modifications that I've done to the boat. But it's a 16-foot deep V at the front, and then it kind of tapers off to more of a shallow V in the back. I don't know if that's considered a mod V or whatever. But this boat can handle everything I've thrown at it. It gets skinny. I'm talking 6 inches of water, I can float it. It handles Lake Erie on a pretty rough day. Not bad at all. It's a little hairy being on a 16-footer, but if you're smart, it's not bad. And the fish that I've caught in this boat since I bought it 2 years ago eclipse everything that I caught in the kayak. That could be, I'll be honest, that I was so focused on getting the content for the YouTube channel and trying to grow this thing into a business at the time that I was so distracted with that I stopped fishing the way that I like to fish, and I stopped excelling on the water like I used to. And the last year, 2024, I caught some of the best bass I've ever caught in my life in Ohio. And it was probably within a 2-month span. It was just back to back. Every trip that we took, we were catching fish. And it wasn't like that on the kayak. There are guys that are going to watch this video that are kayak people, that follow us because we were kayak people, and I want to make it clear, I do not hate the kayak community. I'm not one of those boaters that's ever going to talk down about it. I love what you guys do. I love the passion and commitment behind it, but it wasn't the world I belonged in. And as much as I love it and as much as I respect it, I'm so much happier with this boat that I've got sitting in the garage now that I wish I could go back and stop myself from buying that Big Tuna, regardless of how much I loved it, because of what I've got now. And this boat was $1,000 for the hull. I already had a motor, so I won't count that. And we've done some upgrades to the trailers and stuff like that. So it's gone up, but the hull itself was $1,000. I had at one point 3 Jacksons in my garage that couldn't do what this boat does. And that's where I talk about return on investment. The amount of fishing, the amount of fun, the amount of memories that I've created with this boat in 2 years eclipses anything that I did in the kayak world in 5. And as much as I will forever hold on to those memories and love the experiences that I got with the kayak, this is where I'm meant to be. So, in short, or I guess at least I hope that was short, I hope this kind of explains where my mindset was, or where our mindset was when we decided we were moving on from the kayak world and going back to fishing off of the boats. I hope you guys still enjoy the content that's coming, because we're still fishing a lot of the same spots that we used to fish on the kayak. The places I could take this boat are pretty stupid, and I can't wait to show you guys some of the footage from that. But yeah, hopefully that kind of explains it. Hopefully, if you're a kayak angler, you can at least understand where the mindset was coming from. And yeah, ultimately, I hope you guys enjoy the footage that's coming forward, because we've got some really cool things planned, and I'm excited. We're taking the channel in the direction I always wanted it to go. So with that said, cheers. It's Mike Paletta with Beyond the Cast Filmworks. You guys have a good one.